Hi, welcome back. Today's lecture is about responding to a school crisis. You respond to a school crisis ideally through the use of a crisis management plan. And this plan can be part of your overall public relations plan. The difference is that it's meant to handle something that's a crisis situation. You may sit there and think, well, we don't really have those at our schools. And if you're doing that, you're probably thinking a little too narrowly about what a crisis is. Crisis, we'll get into in a minute, but in any kind of situation that occurs unexpectedly and needs to be dealt with tactfully, sometimes it's a matter of safety, sometimes it's a matter of emotional security for the students, for example. They occur in even the best of schools. Every school, sooner or later, is going to have a crisis situation, and you as a principal will be called in to deal with it. There's a saying that it's better to be prepared than to be scared. So instead of, like in the case study that you're reading this week, you'll notice that the principal is struggling with the situation because there is no crisis management plan. It's better to be prepared in those cases. A crisis management plan serves two purposes, really. First of all, it helps prevent crises. Sometimes things can be put into place, such as security systems, for example, that will help prevent the crisis. But inevitably, there will be times that crises develop. And so it also prepares guidelines to help you get through the crisis. Now, schools and districts usually have two levels of crisis management plans. And so this slide will help you understand the difference. If we look at the four different categories, you'll see that, for example, preventative measures, the district plan usually identifies highly effective measures, and then the school will select which ones of those are appropriate for use at the school. So the district plan, for example, might say that there are going to be security procedures for everyone who enters the school, and the school might decide on those security procedures. Crisis committees, the district will say that one must exist, will provide the guidelines for what they do, responsibilities, and the schools will then decide on the committee structure and individual member roles and responsibilities. Safety and security plans, for example, for lockdowns and for other security issues, the district will establish the guidelines and the school will say how they'll be implemented locally at the school. And safety drills, again, such as a lockdown, how will the drills be conducted, not in the case of a real crisis, but periodically. And then the plan that the school describes how the school will meet the requirements set forth by the district plan. Now, there are any number of crisis situations. Some of them are naturally occurring, such as the top bullet, fires, hurricanes, floods, etc. Sometimes, and all too often it seems like today, we're hearing about violent or acts or threats at schools. I mean, we're certainly all familiar now with Sandy Hook, for example, and Columbine a number of years ago. Accidental deaths or suicides, your case study is a highlight of one of those. Chemical spills you don't usually think about, but that is a crisis. Accidents, structural failures such as a roof collapse, unfortunately acts of terrorism, and many more. So any type of situation that comes up quickly and needs to be dealt with effectively. Holland and McCormick in 1999 defined crisis as a temporary breakdown of the coping. Think about this. Your school has a number of procedures in place to handle day-to-day routine, and when these procedures break down for whatever reason, there needs to be another set of procedures developed that can handle the situation. Crises vary in scope and intensity. So you might have a major crisis on your hands, hopefully not, or you might have something minor, such as a snowstorm that you have to get through for a day or two. They're usually unpredictable. They can occur during school, but they could also occur before, such as your case study, or even after school. It may affect only one person directly, but it can affect the entire community. It could be on-site on the school, or it could be something threatening off-site. For example, a chemical spill that reaches the school. It can be violent or non-violent, and it can be man-made or natural. So many different types of situations fit under this definition of crisis. The U.S. Department of Education has developed a 4-phased plan for crisis management. And we're going to go through these phases and talk for a little bit about them. Prevention and mitigation, preparedness, responses, and recovery. In prevention and mitigation, you'll want to, first of all, conduct a safety audit of the various aspects of your school that are potentially at risk. So a safety audit might be, for example, where do individuals enter a building? Where do they gain access to your building? What are the potential threats around your building? Are there chemical plants? Is there a nuclear power plant nearby? You'll conduct this safety audit, and then you'll also identify local resources and agencies that might be involved in the crisis. So, for example, who are your first responders, your firefighters, your policemen, and what are their plans for handling? So you want to coordinate with them a little bit. You want to understand the traffic pattern that may be pertinent to emergencies. So, for example, if you teach at a school that has one very long driveway and parents line up in the afternoon to pick up their children and block that driveway, then gaining access for firefighters could be difficult, or allowing groups of students to leave might be difficult, particularly in the event of a crisis where parents are rushing to pick up their children. Preparedness involves developing site plans that are intended to be used by first responders. So, do you have a packet of information at your school that you could hand to a policeman who enters? And this might include, for example, floor plans with the entrances and exits clearly marked, the site of any stairwells, the site of major closets. This might be something that would be very helpful in the event of particularly of a violent crisis. Also, think about plans for conducting drills. How frequently will you need to conduct them? Who will conduct them? Who will evaluate them? All of this is involved in preparedness. Response. So when the crisis actually happens, what is involved with your response? So for example, do you have a command center that you set up at a physical location in your building? It could be a cafeteria, it could be the office. This is a place where people would gather and network and disseminate, and information would be disseminated. How would people evacuate? Are the exits clearly marked, for example, for each room of the wing of the building? And how are you going to disseminate information about this plan to your stakeholders? The last phase, recovery, consists of thinking about the strategies that you will use to return the school to normal operations. And what provisions for aftercare will you arrange for? These shouldn't be made in advance. You should know the psychologists to call in, the counselors, and the healthcare providers that will deal with these crisis situations. Let's go to part 2 of the lecture.